Guys, welcome to Headline Buster, brought to you by The Point. I'm Wang Guan, sitting in for Liu Xin. In this series, we dissect stories that are making headlines around the world and talk to my guests to compensate for the missing pieces of the puzzle. So join us in real time by sending us your thoughts and comments via the CGTN page on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Weibo. If you're watching this live on CGTN, email us at thepointwithalex@cgtn.com. Let me know what you think. We might just read out your comment. And also, we start our live streaming every Friday, as you know, at 11 a.m. Beijing time. Get in touch. And before we go into today's segments, I want to show you some of the exciting news. China's got a COVID-19 vaccine that's proved effective and almost ready to go. Actually, we've already received some interesting feedback on social media. So before we go into the details, let me read out some of those interesting comments first. Jane Rawlook says, "What is missing in your report is that I would never allow a vaccine that is rushed by Russia, China, the US, the UK, or any country. So many citizens have already decided they will not take this vaccine as no serious clinical trials have been conducted. And as a side note, the virus is like all viruses. It mutates, so any rushed vaccine is highly unlikely to work on mutated versions. What a waste of world media hype and a total waste of money spent on this race for the first vaccine. Shameful." All right, we hear you. Vishal Patel, this friend, says, "If vaccine is invented by China, no one will use it except China. No one trusts China, as vaccine may be another scam by CCP." All right. And Miranda Yo says, "Keep up the good work with the various vaccines thanks to the scientists of China. Asian countries need an affordable vaccine. I'm just so thankful for the generosity that China has shown my country." As you can see, those opinions, they're very different opinions. We welcome your opinion. We might just read them out loud like we did. It's all about perspectives. Regardless, this week we want to show you some of the background information. Before we get into the headlines, we're going to dissect reports from Wall Street Journal, Japanese media, as well as other news media from around the world. Some background information here. The result of hard work, scientific innovation, and years of previous research is considered key here. The vaccine also brings hope to people around the world. But how are the media covering the story? Sure enough, in some media reports, like I said, there is skepticism, paranoia, and even criticism. But before we look at our examples, some background information. The new vaccine is co-developed by Chinese biopharmaceutical firm CanSino Biologics and a team led by Chinese military infectious disease expert Chen Wei. The vaccine has now finished phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials, which have verified its safety. The phase 3 trial will be conducted overseas and is progressing smoothly, according to the company. And there's more good news here. Other vaccines are also in the works. On August 6th, Executive Director of the WHO Health Emergency Program, Dr. Michael Ryan, said there are actually 165 vaccines candidates in the trials in total. 26 vaccines candidates are in clinical trials, and of the 6 in the final stages of human testing, 3 are being developed right here in China. The other 3 in late-stage tests are being developed by companies based in the US, the UK, and Germany. Another piece of news, Russian President Vladimir Putin last week announced the development of the world's first vaccine against the coronavirus. The first batch will be ready for use in a couple of weeks, according to Russian media reports. As of August 21st, the world has over 22 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, and total deaths has unfortunately reached almost 800,000. I believe at this point, we're all anxiously awaiting a vaccine that actually works. Regardless of who develops the vaccine first, international cooperation is still considered essential. It is a global effort against a global pandemic, and a lot of logistics must still be figured out. Who will get the vaccine first? How much will it cost? And what about people who cannot afford the vaccine? In a way, the hard work, the process is just beginning. Chinese President Xi Jinping back in May promised that COVID-19 vaccine development and deployment in China, when available, will be made a global public good, which will be China's contribution to ensuring vaccine accessibility and affordability in developing countries. Cross-border cooperation is actually already taking place. In fact, all 5 types of COVID-19 vaccines in China are being developed under international cooperation with a list of countries here, including the UAE, Brazil, the UK, the US, and Germany. Potential cooperation between China and Russia is possible, considering China may be able to help Russia with mass production for its second dose of a vaccine, if needed. Now, we're, like we said, going to tell you more about this. This is not a go it alone effort. Regardless, vaccine nationalism is a rising concern, and so are worries that countries are sacrificing safety for speed, and that countries will use the vaccine as geopolitical leverage. At least these are the issues that rise to the surface when some media report on China's vaccine development. Let's look at some of them. The Wall Street Journal on August 17th published this article titled, "China Seeks to Use Access to COVID-19 Vaccines for Diplomacy." It says global health experts expect China, Russia, and other countries to attempt to turn any successful vaccine into a tool of diplomacy amid intense global demand. Well, we've seen this before, no? Like when China was accused of using face mask diplomacy when it supplied other countries with PPE in the early days of the pandemic. So it really should come as no surprise that China is now once again accused of using the vaccine to seek its own geopolitical leverage too. But it gets a little old here. If China offers to help, it's up to no good. If China doesn't help, it's described as selfish and also bad. Sometimes it feels as if China can do no right in this pandemic. The article went on to say that with China closing in on a coronavirus vaccine, Beijing's top officials and some of its drug makers have begun promising early access to countries of strategic interest as it seeks to shore up its global standing after a pandemic that has strained geopolitical ties. Now, the article lists Brazil, Indonesia, Pakistan, Russia, and the Philippines as countries Beijing has promised giving priority in receiving doses and other deals. But when the article explains the reasons behind the cooperation, the details paint a very different picture than the headline suggests. As the article itself mentions, China said it would give priority to the Philippines after its president made a direct plea to President Xi Jinping to give his country access to its vaccines, not the other way around. Pakistan, Brazil, and Indonesia have all agreed to let China conduct clinical trials in their countries in exchange for receiving doses of vaccine when it's ready. As for Russia, he says, Russia may produce a vaccine developed by China's military and China-based CanSino Biologics if the Russian Health Ministry approves. Let's be honest here. Given the current geopolitical situation, would countries like the US or even the UK accept an offer of help or the vaccine itself from China? Well, Russia did reach out to America with its Operation Warp Speed vaccine project, but Moscow was met with a no, the US is currently not open to the Russian medical advances. So, how it goes. Our next example comes from the Tokyo-based Nikkei Asian Review. The August 17th headline reads, "China's lead in coronavirus vaccines raises concern as well as hope. Governmental medical sparks worries over safety and diplomatic clout." The opening paragraph points out that China has emerged as a leader in novel coronavirus vaccines, a development that will enhance its global power, but also raises concerns over safety and the potential for Beijing to use its status in territorial disputes. It reads, "Vaccine diplomacy in China uses the vaccine to wield power is also a concern." But then to back up the claim, it just cites what the president of China is saying, that the COVID-19 vaccine is available in China. It will be made a global public good. Not super convincing there. It also argues that China will use the vaccine as leverage with the Philippines when it says, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has urged China to give his country, here I assume the author intends to write country instead of county, priority in the supply of the vaccine despite its territorial disputes with Beijing over the South China Sea. It is possible that China will use the vaccine as a tool to increase its vaccine. Well, it's also possible that China won't. A lot of things are possible. So if one is going to suggest such a theory, it would be much more convincing if they could back it up with something more concrete, no? Finally, we have an article from Bloomberg. The August 17th article reads, Russia's new Sputnik launch raises risks in dash for vaccine. Here we see double doubts centered on Russia's vaccine, but hey, while we're at it, why not throw China into the mix too? And it did. In a section on China, he says, China has already begun using its shot in the military, and those people are unlikely to be able to give informed, voluntary consent, according to Lawrence Gostin, a Georgetown University professor of global health law. That may embolden other political leaders to take similar steps to bypass regulators like the US FDA. According to this paragraph, not only is China forcing its military to get a vaccine against their will, but it's also to blame if other countries start bypassing their own regulators. It adds that Trump is already in some ways behind in a race where the US's two major geopolitical rivals have used their authoritarian might to sprint ahead. FDA officials have emphasized that they will clear a COVID vaccine only after careful analysis, basing decisions on, quote, good science and data. Okay, so as you can see, Russia and China are winning the race because they're essentially cheating, or as the article says, quote, using their authoritarian might. Hard work, scientific innovation, and years of research just couldn't possibly be the reason. And by adding that the FDA will only clear a vaccine based on good science and data, is that to say China and Russia are basing their decisions on bad science and wild guesses? And there's more. The article quotes an analyst who says, I think Trump will try to influence the FDA and it will bend, but won't break. Gostin said, I have confidence in the FDA, but I'm very worried. I have no doubt that we could go the path of China or Russia if we did not have strong institutional guardrails. Well, these same institutional guardrails certainly have not prevented the virus from spreading, unfortunately, throughout the US, right? Over 5 million cases so far and 170,000 deaths, tragically, so far, with no end in sight. The highest number of cases and deaths of any country in the world, by far. Maybe going to the so-called way of China wouldn't be the worst idea in the world right now.